Hey guys, today we are going to see how to create some nice weapon effects. You can also use these effects in objects and characters. I have created different variations, as you can see. They are pretty similar, but today we will focus on this fire sword. So let's get started. Let's go step by step. First, we will add a cool aura effect to the sword. Then, we will make our sword look even better by adding a fire effect. And finally, we will make it look even more cool by adding some spinning trails and extra details. Let's start with the aura effect. For this tutorial, we will use this amazing sword created by Krystian. This is completely free, so we can use it in our project. Let's download this as a GLB format. Drag our sword into Godot. Let's open the file. And as you can see here, we have a lot of nodes. We only need the sword. So let's go to meshes and save this sword mesh. Click save and re-import. Awesome. So now here we have only the sword mesh. Let's drag this to Godot. What happened? Oh my god. Okay, this is a huge sword. Let's go back to the sword file here. And maybe we can put a scale of 0.01 and click re-import. Okay, this is so much better. Now, if we go to the sword mesh and open the mesh, you can see this mesh already has a material. But I want to add a material in the top of this material. We can do that with a special feature in Godot. If we go to geometry, we can see here the material overlay feature. This is commonly used, for example, for adding snow to a surface or darkness. But today, we will use it to add an aura effect in the top of this sword. So let's create a new shader material here. New shader. Select visual shader. We can name it, for example, aura shader. Oh, by the way, sometimes there is a bug in Godot. If you created this shader and nothing happens, make sure to set this render priority to a higher value, like 2. Let's open the shader here. And I want to do some changes to this shader. For example, let's go to flags and set this to be unshaded. As for this tutorial, we will use some textures. I will leave the links in the description so you can download them as well. Let's choose, for example, this Berlin noise texture, set it to color, and connect this to the alpha channel. We also need a color, so right click and create a new color parameter. Let's name this, for example, aura color. Now let's go to the sword mesh, and here in the material, into shader parameters, let's pick a color. For example, something like this. But maybe this is too weak. I want this color to glow, to be strong. So let's create a new float parameter, right click, and create a float parameter. We can name it, for example, aura intensity. And let's multiply the color with the aura intensity. So now we have this aura intensity value here. Let's set a value, for example, of 6. Awesome. Finally, let's add some movement to this texture. In order to do that, I will create a new UV panning node, connect it here, and here, using this offset option, we can move the texture. In order to do that, let's create a vector2 parameter. We can name this, for example, speed, and create a time. So multiply the time node with the speed. Now, if we go to the sword mesh, in the material properties, we can set a speed, for example, of 0.1 and 1. Excellent. But now we have a problem. As you can see here, I don't want this sword to have this aura effect here in the bottom, just in the top of the sword. But don't worry, there is a simple way to fix this. If we go here, we have this nice texture of this sword. Right click and show this texture in the file manager. And let's open this texture using an editing program. You can use Photoshop or Paint. This time I will use Krut, which is free and simple. I want to do some changes. For example, I want to paint all the image with black except the blade of the sword. And then let's go to filter, adjust, and levels. And move this slider to the left. Save this new texture. We can name it, for example, sword mask. Let's go back to Godot and drag the new texture into the graph. Set this to color. And let's multiply the aura texture with the mask texture. Excellent. Oh, by the way, in case you want to edit these textures here in the properties, you can, instead of using this, you can, for example, delete this and create a texture 2D parameter. Name it, for example, aura texture. Set it to color, and we need to sample this. So instead of using a single texture, we can use any texture we want here. For example, let's pick this or this. Okay, the aura effect is done. Now let's add a cool fire effect to the sword. So let's create a new GPU particle system. Let's name this, for example, fire. And in order to keep everything organized, let's create a new node 3D. And And we can put the sword and the fire inside the node 3D. And also name this fire sword. Cool. So for the fire particle system, we can go ahead and create a new particle process material. Also go to draw process and create a new quad mesh. Okay, we have a lot of quad meshes falling down. This is because of the gravity. So let's go to the particle process material in accelerations and set the gravity to 0. Okay, maybe these particles are too big, so let's do some changes here. Let's go to scale and set a scale, for example, between 0.08 and 0.12. Yeah, this is better. Also, let's go to Bone, Position, and set the emission shape to be a box with a value of 0.015, 0.15, and 0.005. Let's move this a little bit up over here. So this will be the fire. Now let's go to angle and set this to have a random angle between minus 180 and 180. Also, let's go to the animated velocity and set a radial velocity of 0.04, 0.06. Cool. Now we only need to add a material to this particle system. So let's go down into geometry and create a new standard material. And let's do a couple of changes here. For example, in shading, I want this to be unshaded. And also in billboard, let's set this to particle billboard and keep scale. Finally, for the fire effect, we will use a very particular texture, like this. This is an animated texture. I have created this using Blender, and I will leave this for you for free, so you can use it in your video games and projects. So let's go to Albedo, and here we can use the animated texture. Okay, it looks weird because we need to do some changes here in order for this to work. We can go to vertex color and enable these two options. Also, this is a transparent texture, so let's go to transparency and set this to alpha. Cool. Also, we need to go to particles animation property, and here we need to set the number of columns and files of the animated textures. In this case, we have 5 columns and 5 files. Finally, let's go to the particle system. In display, we have the animation option and set the speed to 1. Nice. Maybe we can put more particles. So let's put the amount to, for example, 30 particles. Oh, by the way, as you can see here, the particles sometimes are intercepting with the mesh. In order to fix this, let's go back to the material and enable proximity fade option. Set a value, for example, of 0.05. Cool. Finally, we can change the color of the fire. Let's go to the particle system, and here in the color, we can pick another color. For example, this. Oh, this is perfect for a poison effect. I love this. Maybe something red. orange or red. Maybe this is too intense. Maybe something more dark. Something like this. Yeah, I like this. Let's move the fire a little bit up. Awesome. Oh, we also have a problem. Let me pick the fire sword. And as you can see, if I move the sword, it moves the fire as well. Sometimes this is cool, but sometimes you don't want this. So let's go to drawing option and enable these local coordinates. So now if I move the fire sword, it won't move the fire. Cool. I think our sword is looking pretty good, but we can improve it a little bit. Let's add some small trails and details. Finally, let's go ahead and create another particle system, a GPU particle system. We can name it small trails. And as always, we need to create a new particle process material and assign a mesh. But this time we will use the reborn trial mesh. Oh, maybe this is too big, so let's put a size, for example, of 0.1. Also, it's falling down because of the gravity, so let's go to the particle system and set the gravity to 0. Instead, I want to have a velocity, so let's go to spawn and set a velocity in the y-axis with a random value between 0.25 and 0.35. Let me see. Okay, this looks weird for now because we need to do some changes here in order for this to work. For example, we need to go to the trails option and enable trails. Also, we can set a lifetime for the trails of 0.5 seconds. And finally, let's go to geometry and create a new material, a new standard material. And go to transform and enable this option, use particle trails. So now it looks better. Now we can see all the trails. But let's do some changes here. For example, we can go to the spawn of the particle system, to the position, and I want this to be spawned in a ring position. A ring in the y-axis with a height of 0 and a radius between 0.08 and 0.05. Cool. Also, let's give this orbit velocity. So this is a special velocity. So let's go to animated velocity, orbit velocity, and create a new XYZ curve. Put a velocity of 1. And right now it is spinning in multiple directions. We only want this to spin in the y-axis. So let's open these curves. And let's put, for example, this curve for the x-axis. Let's put this in 0. I don't want to have an orbit velocity in the x-axis. Let's do the same for the z-axis. Now you can see it is only spinning in the y-axis. Okay, let's go to the material and in shading set this to be unshaded. Also, let's go to albedo and here we can set a texture. I will use this texture. But we have a problem. This texture is black and white, it's not transparent. So we can easily fix this by going to transparency and set the blend mode to add. Nice. Let's move our trails back to the sword. And now maybe we can add a color. But first, make sure to go to vertex color and enable use as albedo so we can add a color to this texture. Set a color. Maybe we can put maybe an orange with a raw value of 5, 1.2 and 0.4. Also, maybe this is too much trails, so let's set the amount to 5 and the lifetime to 1.5 seconds. Excellent. Oh, by the way, remember, right now if we move all this, the trails will move separated to the sword, so make sure to enable local coordinates. So that's it for this video. I hope you have learned something cool today, and I want to say a big thank you to all of you guys. I have received a lot of good comments and feedback about my tutorials. I'm glad everyone has been enjoying my videos. It means a lot to me. Thank you so much. I will see you in the next video.